So we just did number 18. Now we need to do number 19. Number 19 is giving me a point and a line that's perp. What does perp mean? Perpendicular. As far as the context of this problem, what does perpendicular mean? What does that tell me in this problem? That means they have opposite slopes. Opposite slopes means I need to flip and negate it. So what is the slope originally? What is the slope right now? What's the slope? Come on, people. 2 over 3. That's not what my actual slope is. My new slope, now that it's perpendicular, I need to flip that and negate it.
So negative 3 over 2.
Very good. I flip it upside down to be 3 halves, and then when I negate it, it was positive, now it's negative. So my slope for my line is negative 3 halves. The rest of this is done exactly like above. We do a lot of these types of problems. So we're going to do it like we did the other examples. Okay? So whenever I say y equals mx plus b, I need to know x, y, and m. What's y? What's y? 2 equals, what's m?
Negative.
You're going too fast. I can't keep up.
All right, I'll slow down. Negative 3 halves times, what's x?
Negative 2
Negative 2
plus b.
plus b. Do I know b?
Nope.
Nope. B is b. All right, so what we are going to do is solve that equation. Once we have solved that equation, we are going to then plug into y equals mx plus b. What would the first step of solving this equation be? Multiply. Negative 3 halves times negative 2 is positive 3. 2 equals 3 plus b. And when I subtract 3 from both sides, I'll have b is equal to negative 1. Does anybody have any questions about where b came from? It's exactly like the problems above it. Once we have b is negative 1 and we have our new slope, what is the equation of the line? Very good. Y equals negative 3 over 2x minus 1. Are there any questions on where that comes from? So the vast majority of those problems are all done identically to each other. You just have to identify the right information from the problem. Finding the slope, finding the x, finding the y, and then following the same process over and over again. Any questions? Let's do number 20. Number 20 is a proportion problem. These will, vast majority of the time on my tests, will give you a decimal answer, which will be perfectly fine. What is the process that you will use to solve this proportion? Cross multiply. That's what you want to do first. To cross multiply, you multiply top times bottom on opposite fractions. Make sure that you distribute if necessary. Distributing is a very important process in this. If I'm going to distribute this, first I would multiply 7 times 4 to get 28 is equal to, this is the one where you have to distribute. Make sure that you multiply the 10 times the x and the 10. So that's going to be 10x minus 100. Make sure that you distribute to that 10 as well. It has to multiply by both things. After we have cross-multiplied and distribute, the next step would be to solve. So I got to get rid of what first? Get rid of 100 by adding. 128 is equal to 10x. Divide both sides by 10. And x is equal to 12.8. It is perfectly acceptable to have a decimal answer in these type. There are no special cases really for any of the rest of the problems, so we're not going to worry about that section. You can use the whole thing for notes. Does anybody have any questions on the basic proportion cross multiplication problems? Make sure you distribute. A lot of people mess that up, so pay attention when you're doing it. Number 21 is a similar triangle problem. The directions will say that these triangles are similar, find the missing value or something like that. The way to do a similar triangle problem, you have to set up a proportion. So make a proportion. The proportion should look like long side over long side is equal to short over short. There are a lot of common errors done on making the proportion. One person will relate the long side to the short side, and then somebody else could, when they're making the second fraction, do the second fraction upside down from the way they did the first one. Let's do this proportion together. What we need to do is say the long side to the long side. So for, what is the long side, 20 or 22? 22 would go over top of the long side of the second triangle. So which one is the long side, 10 or the x? That is where the question mark is. X is equal to. Now I need to relate the 20 to the 10, but what number is on top, 20 or 10? 20 has to be on top. Why does 20 have to be on top? Because 22 is on top. And since 22 is on this triangle and 20 is on that triangle, they should be in the same spot. Right? So make sure that you're putting things in the right spot. Now, the second step after we set up a proportion is to cross multiply. X times 20 is equals 10 times 22 is 220. And after we cross multiply, of course, we should solve. So I just divide both sides by 20, and x is equal to 11. That's the missing side of the bottom triangle. It's 11 inches or whatever long. Are there any questions on how to find that for a cross multiplication similar triangle problem? Yeah. Sure. Let's go to number 22. We're almost done. Number 22 is very similar. A very similar triangle problem. What we want to do is set up a proportion just like what we did, making sure to distribute. So step 1 is to do a proportion. Step 2 would be to distribute. And then after that we want to cross multiply and solve. Thank you. So the first thing that we want to do is set up a proportion. Okay? So I would relate again short side to short side, long side to long side. What is the short side of the top triangle? Okay, well 20 is the long side, but you know, that's okay. 20 could be related to, which is longer, 18 or 2x plus 8? It's kind of a hard thing to tell. You got to look at it. Sometimes you might be able to measure it like with the edge of your paper or something like that. But in fact, the 2x plus 8 is a little bit longer, so that's going to go with the 20. Is equal to what over what? What's going to be equal to? 15 on top, over top of 18. So these are the two fractions that are equal to each other. You need to cross multiply. That's the next step. When I cross multiply and I switch these should be in a different order. All right. When I cross multiply, I will need to distribute. 20 times 18 is 360 is equal to 15 gets multiplied by both the 2x and the 8. What is 15 times 2x?
15 times 2x is 30x.
30x. 15 times 8, 120. 5 times 8 is 40. It's okay. I did the same thing last period, actually. Subtract 120 from both sides after we start solving it, and we get 30x is equal to, was that 240?
Yeah, Brad. Oh, well, it's 8.
And then we divide both sides by 30, and x is equal to 8. Now you have to be careful. Sometimes it asks you to find the length of, for instance, KL or something like that.
So we'll have to plug it in.
So you would have to plug it back in, exactly. Okay? So make sure you pay attention to that. Are there any questions about how to do these similar triangle problems where you have to distribute? Okay? Let's look at number 23. How's number 23 different? What about number 23 is different? These guys are two triangles that are inside of each other, and the 2x plus 14 represents the entire length of RS. The way to get about doing these ones the best would be to first draw two triangles. All right, so I'm going to draw two triangles. The small triangle has what for its lengths of its sides? 5 on the right side and 8 on the left side. The large triangle, which is the entire thing, has 2x plus 14 on the one side. What about the other side? How long is RT?
48. You gotta add 8.
Very good. This is 48 because you add 8 plus 40 to get 48. When we set up the proportion, we'll then do it exactly the same way. So then do like above. So we'd say 8 goes with what? What does 8 go with?
8 goes with 48.
48, and that is equal to 5.
5 over 2x plus 14.
Very good. The next step would be to cross multiply, making sure to distribute when we do that. 48 times 5 is, what, 240? Is that 240? I'm going to go with that. 240 is equal to 16x plus what? 112? When I cross multiplied, I said 48 times 5 is 240. 8 times 2x is 16x, and 8 times 14 is 112. Solving this, I'll subtract 112 from both sides, and this would get me 128. Is that right? 128 is equal to 16x, and somebody divide that for me, please.
It will end up being x equals 8.
X is equal to 8. So that's how that works. Make sure that you know how to find the missing side by adding these things together. Sometimes you'll have to do it in the opposite order and end up subtracting something. So make sure you're paying attention to the differences between those two. Any questions about that?
You have 2 more minutes, Homer.
I know, just 2 more. Not too bad.
15 minutes.
I'm going to make these take 15 minutes just for you guys.
No, because I've already finished them.
Number 24. Number 24, we are going to multiply this, but we're going to just simply distribute. All right, when I distribute these, I do need to worry about the variables. Whenever I'm distributing them, I need to count the x's for each multiplication. So when I multiply, 8 times 5 is obviously 40. But what is x cubed times x squared?
X to the 5th.
There are 3 x's here, and there are 2 x's there. How many x's is that altogether? That is 5,
You don't
x to the
multiply,
5th.
just add.
Right, you add up the exponents. X to the 3rd times x squared is x to the 5th, because there are 5 of them. 8 times negative 2 is negative 16. X to the 3rd times x is, there are 3 x's, and then 1 more makes x to the 4th. And then we do 8 times 8 is negative 64. And then there are how many x's? Simply 3 x's. This would be the answer. make sure you just count up the number of x's. You're not multiplying the exponents, you're just adding the exponents together. There are 3 x's outside, there are 2 x's inside, 3 and 2 make 5 x's. Does that make sense? Everybody good with that? Okay. The last one, there are 2 ways to do this.
Yeah, I use the table.
You can FOIL or you can table. It does not matter to me which way you do it. I don't really care. Sometimes if there are slightly longer problems, like it's a 2x3 or something like that, you would definitely want to use the table. The table method is the most organized of the 3.
You couldn't foil a 2x3.
You could, but you couldn't use the words for FOIL, first, outer, inner, last. You'd have to multiply the first thing times all 3, and then the second thing times all 3. And it'd be just a really long thing to combine. It's a little bit more cumbersome. When I draw the table, I'm going to place the 5r and the 7 along the side, and the r and the 7 on the top. When I'm doing the table method, I will multiply row times column. Okay? So I'll multiply the row times the column just like we did above. 5r will get multiplied by r to get 5r squared. 5r will get multiplied by the 7 to get
35
7 will get multiplied by the r to get, and 7 will get multiplied by the 7 to get 49.
Does that say row times?
Row times column. The row thing times the column thing.
And then you add 35.
And then you will add like terms. Alright, so is there any like term with 5r squared?
Nope.
So 5r squared just gets brought down.
Plus
7r and 35r add to positive 42r. Is there anything to combine with 49?
no.
So it just gets brought down. This is the final answer for that. Are there any questions? This is the only material that is on your midterm exam. So if you know all the stuff from the last 2 days, you should be fine.